People spend years planning financially for retirement. We save, we invest, we wonder if we'll have enough. We think about where we'll live. I know I did, a lot. My husband is Dutch, and one day someone asked him, if you could retire anywhere in Canada, where would you choose? Without missing a beat, he said, Winnipeg. I looked at him and said, you do know many Canadians call it Winterpeg, don't you? I wasn't quite ready to spend my retirement shoveling snow. We spend so much time thinking about where we'll live, what we'll do, and whether we've planned well enough financially. But very few of us prepare emotionally for what comes next. What happens when the career ends? The children need us a little less. Our routines change. And suddenly we're asking questions we never expected. Who am I now? What excites me? What do I want the next 20 or 30 years of my life to look like? If you've ever found yourself asking those questions, I want you to know you're not alone. Retirement is such an interesting season of life. For some women, it's something they've looked forward to for years. For others, it arrives sooner than expected. Some women finally have time to pursue dreams they've put on hold, and others find themselves caring for aging parents, welcoming grandchildren, downsizing, or simply wondering, what now? What next? The truth is, this season can hold tremendous freedom and tremendous uncertainty at exactly the same time. I know it did for me. And perhaps where you find yourself today, you're not unhappy, not lost. You're just wondering what this next season of life could become. And you know what? I think that's a wonderful place to begin. Because questions are often where new chapters begin. A few years ago, I found myself standing at one of those crossroads. My husband and I were preparing to leave the Netherlands after almost 30 years and move back to Canada. Leaving wasn't simply about packing boxes. It meant saying goodbye to neighbors, familiar streets, routines that had quietly become part of who I was. It meant leaving behind almost 30 years of memories. I remember wondering, can I really begin again? Perhaps you've never moved countries, but maybe you've experienced something similar. Leaving a career, selling the family home, watching children build lives of their own, saying goodbye to a role that once defined you. That's a big one. It was for me. Life has a way of asking us again and again to let go of what was before we can fully embrace what might be. I didn't always do that gracefully. Sometimes I resisted. Sometimes I wished life would simply stay the same. But slowly, very slowly, I began discovering something. New beginnings often arrive disguised as endings. And we rarely recognize them until we look back. One of those new beginnings came in a way I never expected. I was invited to write a chapter for a book called The Embers We Carry. And my chapter was called The Ride of My Life. To be honest, writing that chapter felt like a huge accomplishment. I was proud of myself. It was something completely outside my comfort zone. And when it was finished, I thought, well, that was wonderful, and now it's over, finished. I had absolutely no idea it was opening a brand new door. After the book was published, Carrie Scollin invited me to be a guest on her podcast. We had a lovely conversation about my story, but something happened after we finished recording. I remember sitting quietly afterwards, smiling, not because I'd been on a podcast, well, maybe a little, but because something inside me had shifted. I felt energized, curious, hopeful. And perhaps for the first time since retiring, I wasn't asking, what have I lost? I was asking, what might still be possible? That one conversation changed my direction. Wow. And that's exactly what I hope this podcast might do for someone else. Maybe you'll be listening while you're folding laundry, or taking the dog for a walk, or just quietly having a cup of tea. Maybe you've just retired. Maybe you're standing at your own crossroads. Maybe you've been wondering, is your story somehow finished? And my hope is that somewhere during our conversations together, you'll begin thinking something different. Maybe, just maybe, my story isn't over. For many years, I was an English as a second language teacher, and people often ask me if I miss teaching, and my answer is yes and no. I don't miss the paperwork, but I do miss watching someone discover something new about themselves. Teaching was never just about grammar or vocabulary. It was about confidence. Watching someone say, I can do this. Helping people believe they were more capable than they imagined. And looking back now, I realize that's still what I love the most. Whether I'm volunteering with students in Ukraine or connecting with educators through Engine, whether I'm writing, podcasting, or sitting in conversation with women like you, my heart hasn't changed. I still love helping people discover what's possible. That's so exciting. Perhaps that's why creating this podcast feels so meaningful. I'm still teaching in a way, only now the classroom looks a little different. And that's why I created Shine a Light On Your Next Chapter. Not because I have all the answers, I certainly don't, but because I've learned that sometimes all we need is enough light to take that next step. Over the next 4 episodes, I'd like to invite you on what I'm calling the next journey. It's a simple framework that grew out of my own experiences. Not because I had a perfect plan, believe me, I didn't. It grew from taking one small step, and then another, and then another. Together, we'll explore 4 simple concepts. To begin with, nurture yourself first, because before we create something new, we often need to reconnect with ourselves, our bodies, our energy, our spirit. Self-care really is number 1. And then we'll talk about embracing the unknown, because courage doesn't come after certainty. It grows while we're taking those steps, even when we're afraid, especially when we're afraid. In episode 3, we'll explore new possibilities. I'll share some of the small experiences that changed my own life and encourage you to discover that sometimes you simply don't know until you try. And finally, we'll talk about trusting yourself again. Because after 55, 60, or 70 years, we've lived enough life to know more than we sometimes give ourselves credit for. Our experiences, our wisdom, our intuition, they can become wonderful guides for whatever comes next. Can I ask you something? When was the last time you did something for the very first time? Maybe it was last week. Maybe it was 5 years ago. Maybe you can't even remember. What if this season of your life becomes the season where you start saying yes to firsts again? First class, a trip, a volunteer position, a creative project, a conversation that changed everything, because you never know what small steps might become the beginning of something extraordinary. After each episode, I'll invite you to download a simple reflection guide. Not homework. No. Not another thing to add to your list. No. Just a few thoughtful questions to help you pause, reflect, listen to yourself, Because throughout my years as a teacher, I've learned something important. Real learning doesn't happen because someone gives us the answers. It happens when we ask ourselves better questions. We do it ourselves. We learn best by doing. Yes. My hope is that these reflections won't tell you what to do. Instead, they'll help you hear your own voice a little more clearly. You're not looking for someone to tell you what to do. You're looking for someone to walk beside you. And that's exactly what I hope to do. And if by the end of this journey you'd like to continue the conversation, I'd love to invite you to join me in an online women's conversation circle. A warm, welcoming place for women to encourage one another, share stories, ask questions, laugh, reflect, and discover that next chapter becomes even richer when we don't write it alone. Thank you for spending this time with me. Thank you for saying yes to your own curiosity. I truly believe your next season isn't about starting over. It's about discovering what has been quietly waiting to emerge. So until next time, stay curious, keep learning, trust your story, and remember, sometimes all we need is enough light to take that next step. I'm Joanna Vervat, and this is Shine a Light on Your Next Chapter. Thank you.